Hello and welcome to the Kuyumungi Institute, our Q&A conversation for exploration series. I'm Paul Robear, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, advisors, volunteers, and supporting members, we want to thank you for joining us today. Just briefly, I'll mention the Kuyumungi Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder anthropologist, Dr. Felicitas Goodman. For today, our conversation for exploration series is different. We're taking on an approach where our invited guests and speakers are you, our community. As the season shifts, the veil between the worlds grows thin. This time of the year, we're diving deep into the realm of the unexplained. We have a few experiences ourselves to share, but we want to hear from you. Have you ever had an eerie encounter, a brush with the supernatural, witnessed something or someone that defies explanation? Be it a ghost or some kind of other worldly presence, alien, angel, those encounters prompt us to even question our reality. They live with us. These experiences do matter. And so today we want to share your stories to ponder the mysteries where these portals kind of swing open, even if it's just a brief opening. Here are a few other questions I want to throw out at you. Have you felt the presence of a ghost or a spirit? Have you seen unexplained lights or objects in the sky? Experienced psychic phenomena like precognitive dreams or telepathy? Experience missing time? Have you witnessed a scene from a different era? Unexplained sound, music, voices, but without a source. Have you ever visited a place that felt essentially spiritual or otherworldly? Experienced an object moving on its own? Felt some kind of unusual energy coming from an object? And have you ever noticed patterns, symbols repeatedly over appearing in your life that seem to be revealing a hidden message? An intense sense of deja vu, that seeming energy that goes beyond coincidence. These kinds of questions. Laura?
Well, I think of this thinning of the veil. Yes, it can be a dialogue between me and an entity in my everyday reality. But I also think of it as the universe opening up my bandwidth and synchronicity. This isn't going to be a conversation about synchronicities, but I do have one to report because it is like, hey, we're in dialogue with the universe, and those synchronicities are confirming, right? They're leading us. They're in dialogue because they give us insight. So I just have to report one to launch this, and it has to do with ghosts. So it was just last Sunday that we were finishing our conversation describing how with the mysteries, you just dive in. They beckon you. They arrange their own appointments with you. You can also dial up a meeting or two with various spiritual practices for total immersion. Our physiology, after all, does come equipped with a dial on our bandwidth. We can open it, we can close it. And our practice is one of those. And so we must pay special attention when they seem to be confirming what we've just been discussing, or indeed, they can be a forecast or a prelude. We've all had these. But I have to report that it was a few hours after our last Sunday conversation that I'm here with my sister Kimberly, and her friend Paula is here as well. And Paula suggests that we all go off to the matinee 2 o'clock performance at the local community theater here in Friday Harbor of Our Town, the play Our Town by Thornton Wilder, which, if it was for you as it was for me, this was high school standard curriculum. It's one that most of us are familiar with, but it is one of the most celebrated and popular plays for decades. I knew I'd read it, but I'd forgotten what it was all about until the third act. And this is perhaps why this play was scheduled just before Halloween. For the third act features ghosts who all the living have known and grown up with in this small town. But now the ghosts, those who've died, are just sitting there talking amongst themselves as they're watching yet another funeral. And they have a lot to say to the living about life. And so their message is just stop. Just what a blessing, what a joy, what a miracle it is just to be alive. And you're so distracted with your everyday comings and goings and struggles and tragedies. but there's so much beauty around you, so much to enjoy, so much to love and appreciate in those around us. So just stop and acknowledge it. That's what the ghosts are wanting to say to the living. And Thornton Wilder was known to say that our greatest gift that we can give to the dead is not our grief, but our gratitude. And so Kim and I, my sister, paid a visit to the local church with a very extensive graveyard dating back to 1860s, were the earliest graves. This church was built in the 1860s. And we just wanted to say hello to those who lived in the same time frame. We saw many graves from the early 1900s where Wilder had set this play in that time frame. And it was serene and it was peaceful, and there were beautiful views of the valley and the Salish Sea. And so it was just nice to have an acknowledgement. Yeah, we wanted to say to the dead, we hear you. We want to acknowledge you. And so this Sunday, we want to hear your stories and your encounters. Not all ghostly encounters are frightening. I think they're frightening because we don't anticipate it. We don't expect it in our society. We're not acknowledging that in our society. And yet our lived experience will tell us that we have many encounters with all sorts. And I'm not going to share mine today because you've heard my stories. I've had a UFO sighting. I've had many encounters with angels in childhood. I've seen, Paul and I saw a two-dimensional being, non-ordinary being. Many things can flit across our daily waking life. I want to also say that Kim and I were recently at a dinner party at new friends, Freya and Alexis here in Friday Harbor. And of course, in anticipation of this, I said, okay, we're sitting around the dinner table. Tell us your stories. I know you all have them. And it was interesting to hear their stories, real life stories, and one involving a car, one involving technology that wouldn't turn on, one involving cameras picking up stuff, one involving a radio that switched gears all on its own so it could deliver a very special message. I'll let those people tell their stories. But one of the observations that we had to make was, look how electronics is playing a part in all of these stories. Look how ghost investigators use electronics to try to detect their presence in the room. It seems that these encounters can be registered on our technology quite readily. And then we had to all think about, hey, we are biomagnetic beings, are we not? We have an EM presence here. We are electromagnetic. We have powerful batteries, generators and batteries. There's one in every cell, as it is for all of life. And we have a particularly powerful one called our heart. And its amperage and its voltage goes way up when we have an emotional response in life. And so another guest observed, hey, vitality is a measurable voltage in our cells. So I think that we are transmitters and receivers. We are on a wavelength where we can be transmitting and receiving a dialogue with those entities. They must have a shared bandwidth here, along with our electronics. So I think that with the mysteries, though they are vast and they are deep, we can start with ourselves. We are also equipped with receptor sites, and we're going to hear those stories. We've got the receptor sites, we've got the bandwidth to register encounters that are beyond our daily, what you see is what you get, everyday reality. We have far larger bandwidths. So we want to hear your stories. All right, you've heard mine.
You know,
Oh my God, I'm sharing a screen
no,
with
that
you.
was a fabulous introduction.
Yes.
Let's go to Karen first, because Karen sent us a video clips. Karen, first of all, tell us the story before
Talk
we do
about
the video.
registering on electronics, Karen.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
right. Yes. That's a tie-in because I have a friend who lives in India part of the year and then comes here, visits and goes elsewhere. He has family in the United States. And so when he's here, he sings these sacred songs he's learned both in Sanskrit, and he said the song that you're going to see a clip of is Gujarati. I don't understand either one, so I can never tell which language he's singing in. But I know that Sanskrit, the vibration of the sounds is supposed to have a special effect. But this song, the night he was singing it, I just picked up my cell phone. I just felt the energy going on in the room. And I'm not sure that I would have perceived it if it hadn't been recorded, but I can't tell because I usually look through the cell phone when I'm recording. But uh, so I don't know if I would have seen it without the help of my cell phone, which recorded these light streaks and then this spark that you have to watch closely. There's a spark that goes diagonally across the screen. And so I happened to be telling Laura about this because we're on the same island at the moment. And she said, oh, Aboriginals in down in Australia have the experience often when they're out singing their songs that they see sparks flying. It's the spirits, they say, coming around. So
Yeah.
and this song, because I just talked to my friend, is it's the three-headed the Trinity you could say of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. This song is dedicated to the god of nature.
Thank you for that.
First streak. Okay.
So Karen, let me go back here. So it was someplace in the section where you see just a flash, you're saying, on the screen?
Well, before you see, I don't know if Laura saw it, I know.
Awesome. Yeah.
Before you see the spark that goes
I just
by,
saw one there. Okay, so here's one.
it's
right
right at the
there.
beginning. It's in the first 30 seconds.
Okay,
First 30 seconds. One goes from upwards.
yeah, I think I just saw that. Okay,
And there's one that goes down towards the end.
yeah,
One
there's
starts at the
one.
top, and it's the spark goes from the top to the left.
Okay.
And when I freeze it, I see some little oblong shape. But you see a spark in the video.
There it goes again. Yeah.
That's the second one. And then very soon the third one will come from
Oh,
the
yeah.
top. There.
There you
There.
go.
Yeah.
Very
That was
interesting.
this clip. And I've gone back over some other clips that are done at night. That was one of my questions. Do we see these more at night?
Mhm.
Because in the daylight, I was thinking with the light around, it'd be hard to perceive them.
Hmm.
These kind of experiences happen more at night.
That's why we see
Wow.
the stars at night, right? So
Yeah.
speak contrast. Interesting. What time of day was that?
It was probably 7 or 8 in the evening. It was in September.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
They
Thank you,
usually-
Karen.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank
Well,
you.
and,
Anything else? I just want to say that Louise Gilmore, we had an extensive interview with her about her time with Aboriginal aunties, they call themselves, the elders, out at a very sacred remote place in the outback of Australia. And they were doing ceremony with her leading it. And many of the people saw lights dancing over there by a bush. And they said, Auntie, what are those lights? And Karen said, the response was, oh, those are the elders. Those are the spirits. They like to come and dance with us when we're doing ceremony.
All right.
and do they do this at night?
I believe it was at night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Karen, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Karen and her husband are filmmakers, and so they probably have lots of stuff that they got to go back through and see what else they can find.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank
well,
you.
Karen and Kim and I got to go to the opening of the Friday Harbor Film Festival last night and meet many of the filmmakers. So that was
Right.
that was great fun.
You
And,
know,
we want to interview. I just have to say, we want to interview. Thank you again, Karen. We want to interview two gals, and their byline is "Two gals take on the world," and they're like, one's in high school and one's just getting into college. They're on their third or fourth film, short films. They filmed where her grandparents, one of them in Gig Harbor had witnessed the capture in the 1960s of an orca. And that orca was then at one of those places with other orca. And she said this orca only lived about 10 years and he committed suicide by banging his head against the wall of the big tank.
Hmm.
So they're going to come and join. Yeah.
Well, also I was going to mention a synchronicity, and then yesterday Laura had called me, and she's working on a special project which we won't discuss yet, but it has to do with making a documentary film, getting stories going from the past, et cetera, et cetera. So this morning at greeting the day at my stone circle, a guest joined me. He asked me about what we were doing and stuff, and I told him a little bit about it all. And he says, "Oh, great." He says, "Well, I'm a filmmaker, I'm an actor and a producer from Chicago." Yeah. So those kind of things just pop up, and he's, and to be a writer and how to put together your scripts for proposals and all of that. And it's like, so, well, we need to talk. We've got some questions. He says, and he specifically had an interest in working with nonprofits. So I said, okay, we've got a project. Let's talk. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to join the Frank because Frank's on the timeline, and we always like to hear from Frank. He's got stories. Trust me, Frank always got stories.
Jill does as well.
And
Yeah.
Jill, I know. Hey, Frank.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Great.
Laura.
Hey there.
I always feel like a spiritual barbarian when engaging in these conversations because I have a really sort of a very pedestrian view of all this stuff. Like,
Sure.
I believe that that we're human beings are transceivers, that and mirrors. And I've had when you were reading off all these things that all these phenomenon that. Yeah, it's a yep. I've had all of them, but my perception of it is it may be a little different than people that are certainly operating on a higher vibration than myself. Like, for example, like I was recently in Sicily, and my parents they came to America after the war, and I live in Sedona, and there's this beautiful red rocks here. I don't know where everybody else is. That's another thing. But there were these beautiful red rocks, and they're about 135 million years old, and and I can't wrap my head around that. I don't know what 130 million years. That's a long time. But in Sicily, there are these buildings with a cornerstone that is etched in at 1100, 1600, and I'm confronted with the magnitude of the human experience. And I grew up hearing a lot about World War II from the Italians, who were smart enough to get bombed by both the Germans and the Americans because they changed sides in the middle of the war. My people. But I could swear that as I would walk down the street, I could hear the sound of jackboots. I could feel the desperation and terror that I didn't live in, but it was visceral. And I didn't see that as a phenomenon as much as an experience, like it sort of it was somehow in my blood. And I've had a number of really experiences where I felt the divine, but not in the way that people often describe it. People in some cultures, they walk around saying, "Oh, God is good." Well, if you say that, then he's bad too, right? So, but I had an experience that also in Sicily recently. There's a church that has a clock tower that's called the astrological clock because it has the zodiac on it, and it also reflects the stations of the moon. And it's an engineering feat of the 17th century where everything works with weights and counterweights. And there are three large life-size figures that circulate the clock tower when the clock chimes. And it's in a square in Messina, and it was but the particular aspect of this clock is at noon, after it finishes ringing the bell, it starts to play an instrumental Ave Maria. And I remember standing in the square with my eyes closed facing the sun and listening to this, and all of a sudden, this voiceless whisper came through me that said, Frankie, it's time to make peace with everything.
Mm.
It just went through me. And it wasn't about forgiveness and it wasn't about compassion. It was about making peace, which I interpret as bringing an offering, like smoking the peace piper. It's an offering. It's not, it's beyond forgiveness, where there's always a little bit of ego attached to it. This was not an ego. This is an offering. And it was a glimpse into the divine, a glimpse, because I look at the Hubble picture, the Webb telescope pictures, and I'm reminded of the expanse and vastness of my ignorance. That there's no way that I could, how much I don't know, and how much of my life was engaged in trivia pursuit. I know when the French Revolution started, and I know the origins of why people are left and why people are right. Who gives a fuck? If it doesn't involve connection and humanity, it seems meaningless to me. And I really think that the divine is made manifest through acts of the humane.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've seen lights that I don't know what they mean, and I've had experiences where I've been with people that are in profound states of suffering, and somehow I knew what to say.
Yeah.
I knew how to do that, and with I felt like, as a matter of fact, it startled me because I know that I didn't know this stuff, and somehow it pops up. And is it the divine, or is it tapping into the 0 point field? I don't know. And I've become very comfortable with I don't know. I don't need to explain this stuff. I just need to keep practicing as best I can to be a decent man, which is a full-time job.
I think it's dangerous to try to label the mysteries. They are the mysteries. They will remain the mysteries, profound and vast
Yeah.
and out of reach and beckoning us ever. Yeah.
There's,
And I think the universe and its immensity, hey, it's a long and winding road. And I delight in the fact that it's going to be an endless journey. How cool is that? Right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Ever expanding, ever evolving.
I don't
I'm
know.
on board with that. Yeah.
But I just, I was thinking that the Hindus say that if God reveals itself incrementally, because if you're fully exposed to the divine, it would shatter you as a human being.
Yeah.
And I think where I see that is, like, sometimes when I'm blue, I like to look at YouTube videos of golden retrievers with children, because
Oh.
it's an amazing thing to watch. And sometimes, like, the parent is going to surprise the kid with a puppy, right? So the kid doesn't know what's going on. He's in the room. They bring in a box. The kid opens the box and he trembles and starts to cry hysterically. And I think that what that is that the heart reaches its maximum capacity to
Yeah.
experience love, to the point where any more than that, the kid would probably disintegrate, and I've had those experiences where it completely transcended my ego for a moment, and I got a glimpse into the divine. And I've been privileged with these occasional glimpses that are so powerful that, and I can see it in retrospect, but at the moment, I'm in that place where the ego is gone. Just for a second, it's gone.
It's dissolved the boundaries
And
and
it's
merge
just,
the divine. Yeah.
and and at that moment, it brings me to the place where I understood why I took drugs for as long as I did. I just wanted to be free. That's what freedom is. I didn't know that, but and at the time, because I was too invested in my suffering. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
And it's okay.
yeah. It's okay not to know.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Frank.
Thank you.
Yeah, Frank, you always bring a lot to the conversation. And I like about Frank is he's boots on the ground. He's dealing with lots of people going through, trauma, big deal trauma. And that really brings a reality to life that some of us miss out on one level. It sounds kind of funny to say it that way, but there's an element to being able to see it in people, to grow yourself, to understand the human condition and all of its facets. And a lot of us have one side of the human experience, and But when we get exposed to the kind of thing of people, in the situations that Frank's had to facilitate and to work with, and how that's impacted him in his life, I'm always inspired by Frank's boots on the ground attitude.
Well, and let me also add that that was really, Encountering the Mysteries was last Sunday's.
Hmm.
And then these ghosts in this play had something really profound, the same message to
Right.
say to be the living. And now you're saying it again, Frank,
Yeah.
as well. So, I mean, we're getting it from all sides, the same message. Can we just stop and set down our arms and appreciate one another and love life? Yeah. So thank you for that. I want to say that Frank's in his and Jill's art studio. This has become one of the destinations when we have events in Sedona. We always go out and visit this beautiful sculpture that Jill's doing, and her art studio.
And teaches, and it's a community center is what it's turned into. Yeah.
That's another mystery to me. How I wound up with a woman like this, like what am I doing with
Another
this
story.
life?
We're going to tell
Like,
on
how did
Valentine's.
that happen? It's what?
Thank you so much, Frank. Yeah.
All right.
You've really kind of launched the discussion, and I like the fact that we've had the spectrum of sharing to get us going. So I'm going to open up now where people can raise their hands using the Zoom screen.
I see
Carolyn is going to
Oh.
share next, and here she is. Hello, Carolyn.
Oh, does Carolyn have some stories? Oh, yeah, she does. Yeah.
I could go on for the 2 hours with stories, but I did want to say I do have a special story that I wanted to tell and share. But I did want to say to Karen, I think they're there all the time, these spirits. We just, we're not seeing them in the daylight. I'll tell you a quick story. I know that,
Can you adjust your camera so we can see all of you? Yeah. Better, thanks.
But anyway, on the way home, I decided it was dark. It was like 10 at night. I decided I wanted to go down to the beach. This isn't the story that I originally wanted to share, so I'll make it quick. Just had a calling to go to the beach, and as I was going up, I live at the beach, and when I was going up onto the boardwalk, I heard, go get your cell phone to take pictures. So I did that. I listened. I always listen. And I went and I got down on the beach and I lifted my phone to start taking pictures, and I saw an energy swoop in. And I just started clicking wherever I felt. I didn't see anything with my eyes. I lowered my phone. I didn't see anything, but I click. I have 10 pictures of spirit activity from that night, all different shapes, and one that I've come to know as my gatekeeper. The gatekeeper helps you when you're going into an altered state, and I did a meditation within a group subsequent to that, and was, contacted by that figure in that picture that I knew was important when I looked at them, told me that it was my gatekeeper. So, I think that we can't see these things, but they're always there. They're always around us. Everything.
It sends them.
We are part of that world. So,
yeah.
And Frank, hi, Frank. Love seeing you. He's still there. I don't know if he's still there. I don't think so. So the story I wanted to tell you is kind of like a mystery school, concluding in a ghost story. When I was a little girl, I was very, very close to my mother, always. And even, she loved the musical Carousel. I don't know if any of you know that musical, but whenever it was on late at night, she would invite me to watch it with her. I was a little girl, so it was a big special thing because I got to stay up late, with my mom. There were 4 kids. I was the oldest. And it's a story about a man who dies, and the first scene is he is in heaven and being told that his daughter that he never met was having trouble on earth. And they let him see, and they let him go down and interact with her if he wanted to, which the whole movie is about that. It's a beautiful story. So even in grade school, I would be in the auditorium or sitting in class, and I would just have this heartache about missing my mother.
Mm.
And it was unusual. It wasn't like a kid who didn't want to go to school, and which I didn't, and missed their mother and wanted to get home. Well, fast forward to I was right before 15. I was 15 years old. I was babysitting. I came home one night and my mother was already in bed, and I got a really bad feeling. I was calling the doctor because she never went to bed early. I said I was going to stay with her. He called in medicine, whatever. It wasn't a medicine thing, but a couple hours later, she went into the bathroom. I followed her, and she ended up passing from a blood clot to her lung that evening. So now that it's later in my life and I know all what I know, because I do know that they're always here with us, that those incidents in grade school was me having like a precognition of my mother not being there and I was missing her. But fast forward again. Oh, okay. So then the year after she passed, horrible at home. My father basically lost his mind, and my grandparents had to take the four of us to live with them. They came during the day with a van and packed up some of our stuff and brought us to live with them. About a month after that, I woke up in the middle of the night and my mother was sitting on my bed. And she was not, I could, kind of see through her, but she was there. And she said, I waited until you all were safe to come and I wanted to say goodbye. And, I knew she was there. It was her. And I said, well, I don't want you to go. And she started kind of like floating off. And I did not get out of bed, but my consciousness went and saw her go down the steps and go to my grandparents. So it was a beautiful thing. I love seeing my mother. Fast forward like 20 more years, I'm at a Santana concert and one of the songs came on and the backdrop changed and my mother was talking to me, telling me that she gave me all this independence. She sent me to camp when I was little, which I hated. I cried the whole time I was there. I didn't want to go for 3 straight years, but I loved it. I cried when I left too. I sent you to camp to make you independent and let you go on the bus and the train by yourself so you would be an independent person. She was telling me all this. And then when the song was closing, she was leaving and she was gone. And it was beautiful.
Right. Wow.
And then recently a friend of mine gifted me with an angel reading. Thank you. And it was my mother came in with a bunch of other angels and I know that it was her because this woman was saying things to me and it was like my mother saying things like, why don't you read books anymore? You love reading books. Why don't you listen to music? You love all this stuff. And I knew it was her. And she did say, this angel woman, that one person after they pass is allowed to follow you for the rest of your life and be your angel. So she said my mother chose me, and I do believe it. I feel my mother with me all the time. And I thought your father, Laura, it's like your father gave me a message to give to you one time out of the blue, and I'm not scared of these things. I think it's beautiful. But I could go on and on. I have so many stories. But I love that story. I wanted to share that with you. I don't think you guys have ever heard that before.
Yeah. I had not heard it. Beautiful story. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah.
I know that angel reader. If anybody wants a recommendation, we had
Yes.
profound experiences as well.
Very good. Yes. And
Nice
so
to
did
hear.
Leslie. I recommended her to Leslie, and she did as well. She's good.
And by the way, when your technology started flickering on and off, Tony's in the chat room put, how do spirits play with AI? And then I asked the question, or vice versa, well, what's going on with
I
technology?
was thinking also that before we had technology, back in the olden days, we had messengers that were nature, animals. The birds would come, the ravens would come deliver a message, the hummingbirds. We still have that. People have these butterflies, a feather drops, a certain flower sprouts up. I mean, nature delivers these messengers from these. They work through those very often in very poignant ways, a cloud, an image. And now it's happening with, you said, a screen in a Santana concert. Let's add that to the list of electronic devices that can deliver messages. My sister has profound ones with a radio. Paul had a profound one with radio.
Yeah.
So interesting, isn't it? Cameras showing up. I can't tell you the number of times after one of our experiential ritual posture sessions, people come up and say, look at this photograph of orbs that appear when they were doing this on their own. Yeah, so things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I know you have
Mhm.
many, many more, Carolyn. I hope you're
Oh,
right.
definitely. Yeah, the screen.
Yeah, we'll have more of these discussions. We want to hear more stories. We want to validate our lived
Thank you,
experience.
Carolyn.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you.
Our worldview should be stretched to accommodate what we experience and what we are transmitting and receiving. I
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
Heading
Just-
towards it.
I'll just tell a quick story since you mentioned it, and that was that at 1 year from the time that your mother passed, we were going to have a gathering with your sister Kim, and we had scheduled that let's get together and light a candle and just kind of honor Bernice, your mother.
Kim and I
And
had scheduled it, and we told Paul, you've got to come home.
you got to
by
be here by 3 o'clock, and so I'm in the car. And it's one of these radios that actually show you the song coming on next. And it's Unforgettable is the song that comes on just before I pull in the driveway by not Johnny Mathis, Nat King Cole, I think Nat King Cole. It was Laura's mother's favorite song. And she really literally held me and said, Paul, before she passed, she said, Paul, you have to play that song at my memorial. And because I play piano, and I said, Bernice, that song is not something that I'm that talented at. It's a beautiful song, and we went down. We found a piano player where she was, and this guy made a magnificent version of it. But so this is on regular radio stations, which does not play that kind of music. And at the time we were meeting, that song came on, Unforgettable. And I had to grab my phone and record it. I could not believe that one song would come on at that very moment that we decided to have a memorial session for Bernice. So, yeah,
I also have to say that Kim does this regularly. She will light a candle every day in honor of our mom and dad.
yeah,
And we started out on our mom's birthday, on her departing day. We would light a candle. We'd get together on Zoom and we'd just say some remembrances and some best wishes.
Hmm.
And then the first thing that this angel reader, Francine, said to me when I had my reading, and I gifted my sisters, and
yeah.
why aren't you, your mother's here, why aren't you lighting that candle?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember.
Yeah. First
Well,
thing.
we'll continue with stories.
I can start. Yeah.
Tony has his hand up, and Barbie's ready to go after Tony. So,
Vance also has his hand up.
and Vance as well. Okay, we got three.
Vance, are you on a timeline?
A little bit. I got a contractor coming in 30 minutes, but
Okay,
I'm
can we
enjoying
go to
this
Vance
completely.
first? Just let's go to Vance first because
Well, Vance and then Tony. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's very kind. I'm just
Yeah.
fascinated
We want
by.
you to be late. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
we appreciate you dropping in today.
Oh, it's good to see you for remote. Thank goodness for technology. And here we are talking about technology in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. I find, I wonder if other people, depending on where we're at, what our circumstances are, we may or may not feel comfortable talking about things in this political season that let's don't talk about.
Mm.
Or if we're the token person of one skin color in a group of 500, and I've been on both sides of that, it's interesting. I'm in technology and I'm a scientist, and it is a very difficult conversation, this one here, folks, today, because if you bring this up, it's very controversial. And so we scientific technical people just tend to sweep this under the carpet. And so I know there's no such thing as ghosts because I'm a smart guy, right? Well, I had a really hard time. I still have a place in Los Angeles. that is one of the oldest buildings downtown, 130 years old. And I had no idea it was haunted because I don't believe in that stuff. And my partner and I kept hearing noises and I kept trying to find them. And she says, well, those are the two ghosts that live in our unit. And I said, no, 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 we're on the top floor, da, da, da. Make a long story short, it was a spring day and I closed all the windows, turned off the air conditioning and lit two candles. And I said, okay, ghosts, we're going to have a conversation. They didn't say anything because to my knowledge, ghosts don't speak English. I said, but I think you understand me. So if the answer is yes, make these flames wiggle. And I thought there was one ghost. I said, is there one ghost? Is there two ghosts? You know, now I wasn't drinking. Okay. I really don't drink much, but I was completely sober, wasn't smoking, injecting anything. Okay. And for the next 20 minutes, I asked a series of questions. Half were yes, half were no. There was no equivocation. After that session, I had two stiff drinks because it changed my perspective. And there were several other encounters. I have a couple videos of, in case you're interested, and I could share sometime. There
Yeah,
are
yeah.
3 to 4 foot tall columns of light. Think of Star Trek. Beam me up, Scotty, you know. None of you are old enough to remember that, but I watched the originals. So, you know, you got that column of light as you're getting beat. So it was like that, 3 or 4 feet, maybe 6 inches wide, very ephemeral, kind of like a lacy lit curtain. And you could see them walking and moving through the walls. And it's not possible to be a scientist after that who wasn't changed. So just fascinating. And there were a number of other encounters there. And here I live in Sedona right now, and I don't have any ghosts here. I go to the LA house and I enjoy communing with them. It's a little quiet here at my house.
So how
Great.
many among your fellow scientists have had mystical encounters, do you suspect, or have, if you say you
Yeah.
did, do they then confess quietly?
Maybe 2 or 3 out of 100 that I've chatted with. And I do a lot of conferences, travel, you know, and stuff. And so I have many contacts, and I'm very reluctant to bring this up because the instant reaction is, are you crazy?
Mm.
What are you drinking, injecting, right? And so I really save it for people who I'm really intimately familiar with. And I like to rattle them a little bit. I like to challenge people, you know, yeah. And so very few, maybe less than 5, Laura.
How do you describe how it changed your perception of reality or your worldview? Why can't science
It makes
coexist
me,
with people?
it makes me reconsider everything I'd learned, you know? And I think we all need to do that. We are products of our environment, our past, and our ecosystem, all of us as humans. And that's, I think, perhaps to some degree, why we're all tuned in today to say, what else could I be learning? I'm not 29 years old. I'm really can't call myself middle-aged because middle-aged would mean I have half of my years left. Now, I don't know if any of you are 45 years old, 50, but I've got tennis shoes that old. So I think it's time to open up a little bit and consider what we haven't learned, you know, and that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Well, one of the things since you're a CEO in the field of aviation,
Yeah.
these sightings that people talk about, and pilots, and they said just can't be described as someone who's, you know, technically proficient in the world of aviation, that there's no reason for these particular phenomena to exist.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing because the vast majority are probably false.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a wonderful article or podcast on BBC about Piltdown Man. And if anyone's into archaeology, Piltdown Man was a discovery of the missing link that changed the view because it showed that the head of humans evolved faster than the mandible. So for 60 years, that changed the whole field of archaeology. And then we found out, you know, in the 50s that it was fake, completely fake. And so it wasted so much time, so much effort going down a wrong path. And unfortunately, the vast majority of these UFO cases can be explained, and they're not UFOs. And so it's a lot of crying wolf that allows smart people to say, poo-poo, look at these. And it's probably 90, maybe 98%. But there are definitely many hundreds of instances that seem to be the real deal. And I personally believe they are, but I'm not an expert. So
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Vance. Yeah.
Thank you.
thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Look forward to having a coffee with you and getting caught up. Yeah.
I'm in town for 2 weeks, then I'm going to Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Israel. I'm equanimous. We'll hopefully calm it down a little bit while I'm there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Beautiful. Well, wonderful to see you. Yeah, we'll do this for sure then in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
I'm going to go now. Speaking of scientists, Tony's also a scientist and
And a mystic. Mhm.
and a mystic. Yeah, it's true. Tony's open to the exploration.
Well, let's see. I guess I'm on. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you are.
Van's fascinating, and Carolyn also. You each evoked all sorts of thoughts that I thought I would spend just a moment sharing. Vance, maybe unlike you, I have found many scientists are open, quite open to other things happening. This is not what we can publish in papers, but there is the admission that this is a source,
Mhm.
that the knowledge that comes from somewhere before the experiment is done, and you watch and see if it's realized or not in the experiment. So I find that interesting, but you're not going to see anybody giving papers at a conference, or maybe you will.
And it should
Uh,
be like this. Mhm.
I heard a paper at the American Astronomical Society meeting about doing astronomy with two eyes. And I thought that was very interesting, by a professor at U of A, an indigenous professor at U of A. And she talked about the other way of knowing at the
Mhm.
same time. And the talk was rather well received. So anyway, I simply will say that there may be some hope here, and the conversations I've had, including with a Nobel Prize winner who was house guest with me earlier this year, amazing things we could talk about, and that was really nice. Uh,
With our long-term discussions with you, Tony, this seems like the field of astronomy, astrophysics is a little bit more open than other scientific fields. Maybe your community is, maybe just by the pure fact of what you're exploring and the vastness of it, you can't be so damn sure that the reality is only one little slice of the pie, that reality has other dimensions to it, possibly. Something
Well, in
like that.
astronomy, you're already getting overturned. All your ideas are constantly overturned with the Hubble
Is
and
an
now,
evolving.
right? So
well, this is exactly what science is designed to do, is to overturn what your prior knowledge was. And this is why we build instruments like the Webb telescope, and we're now beginning to think about Habitable Worlds Observatory, which will be a Webb-sized telescope to look at Earths around other suns. So there's a big story here, of course. But let me simply mention something that Carolyn evoked in me when she talked about some of the experiences. And a few years back, I got a call from my ex's son-in-law saying that my ex-wife uh, was in life support in Phoenix. And if I wanted to see her again, I had to be in Phoenix that afternoon. This was at 12:35 in the afternoon here. And I went to a plane and got on a plane and got on standby and got to Phoenix. And I ended up, her larger family was all around her. I was the one who held her hand as she passed with the disconnected life support. And this is, of course, a very loaded, very emotional thing to
Mhm.
experience. Now, her funeral was to be a week and a half later, and I decided I could not deal with being with her family then, and I already had made reservations to go to a place called Esalen, which the Esalen Institute on Big Sur, that probably most of you have heard of, for the Midsummer Nights concert. And after much reflection, I thought, I can't be there. I need to be at Esalen. This is the right place to be. And I walked out to the lawn and found a seat. And the opening, I knew the main act, but the opening act was amazing. It was a musician from Hawaii. Her name was Tamani, who had been a child prodigy and had studied under Don Ho, etc. And she was playing the ukulele. Well, she started by playing Stairway to Heaven.
Ah,
Mm.
And right after that, she went into a Beethoven piece that Kim used to play on her piano.
ah,
And I knew she was there, not at the funeral in Holbrook, Arizona. I knew she was there. And well, I could tell dozens of stories, including stories of astronomers that had power places in the Sonoran Desert and things like that. Um, but I should probably stop now because I'm sure there are all sorts of other great stories. But I want to say that things come to us in ways that may be unexpected. And I really appreciate what Carolyn and Vance had to say. And I missed the first part, but I know I heard Laura saying some and Paul saying some amazing things too. But
yeah.
thank you very much, and I'll close with that.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Tony. I know that was an emotional story to share. I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. That understanding that role, and I do give Dr. Goodman, the founder of this institute, that recognition of someone who struggled with the fact that she really was an academic. She really was cutting edge researcher from the field of academia, but she also didn't close the door to that of the world of direct experience. The land of New Mexico, it's transforming for her. She just transitioned from something that she had spent her life on the field of intellectual pursuit, and then had that feeling of land and that feeling of indigenous cultures, and feeling the energy of what it feels to be surrounded by the Pueblo people, and how the Pueblo view of the world was something that just blew her mind. And she was like, okay, this is another whole avenue of research that we need to understand. Us Westerners have isolated ourselves. And
She spent a lifetime saying that she, as many of us have had mystical experiences. Now, how do we dial it up on demand?
yeah,
How do
right.
we activate our physiology to swing that door open? And because as Carolyn said, this is all around us all the time.
Hmm.
The ones that have shut a door, how do
Yeah.
we swing that open again? We
Yeah,
need to navigate this world, but we can also stop, open that door, and have that exchange. And she said it's a very time-honored covenant between the realms. There's protocols involved. We can activate this at any time. Pretty cool. And it's accessible to us Westerners. We're not cut off from that. We may no longer live in the indigenous traditional ways, but we still have the same physiology. We still have it within us to open that door at will as they did. So and we can
Yeah.
choose. We can choose to convene. We can choose to have these encounters, these dialogues, these immersions. So
yeah. The expansion of the human experience continues
sometimes they
to,
just happen. Yeah.
yeah,
You were
exactly.
going to say, Paul, that sometimes the expansion.
Oh, I just said the expansion of the human experience continues to be something the layers are being peeled away. We keep finding more and more stuff, much like the Aboriginals talk about dream time. And so we've always dismissed that from Welsh, not we, but the culture and Western culture has a tendency to be dismissive, but why not allow that to be there without dismissing all of the science that we have at our fingertips today?
And I think that's what the mystery schools are about. Society, if you're going to demonize this kind of thing, we'll just go underground, right?
Yeah.
We'll just quietly. I appreciate our more open society today.
Well, let's go to Barbie and have her share her experience.
I started jotting down all these different things. I'm like, oh, I have so many. So I am a Reiki practitioner. And so, as you can imagine, I have had many experiences with ancestors and guides and, things like that always come up in Reiki sessions. But I have a couple of I promise not to hog the mic too much, but I have a couple of personal experiences that are kind of different from each other that I thought I might share.
Hmm. Yeah.
My mother passed away in 2016, and I she lived in Reno and I lived in Southern California, and so I would go visit her often during this time when she was feeling like she might transition soon, but she wasn't ever hospitalized. Anyway, I went and saw her on a Saturday, and on a Sunday, I was on Lake Shasta in Northern California, and I was up one of the tributaries and noticing that the boat was surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of dragonflies. It was so beautiful. And I was taking pictures, trying to, capture that moment. Well, when I got off the boat and back to where I was staying, I had a phone call telling me that my mother had passed away. And it turns out that my mother had passed away right at that moment when all of those dragonflies were surrounding the boat. I went back to my phone to look at pictures of the dragonflies as I was sort of processing all of this. Not one dragonfly in any of the pictures that I took. So yeah, they were not there. They were not there, but they were there, and there were other people who saw them. So that was interesting. And then fast forward, I got home uh, a week or so later after taking care of things, and my one lamp in my house kept flickering, and I kept getting phone calls from Nevada. And there was never anybody on the other end of the line. My mom had lived in Reno. I don't know if I mentioned that before. So I kept getting phone calls, and I did a little like reverse lookup, and the number did not belong to anybody. So I got probably 5 to 8 phone calls after she passed away. Yeah.
Getting telephone.
It was just a lot. I still have that lamp. It does not flicker. It only flickered for a short period of time after she left. So I have had experiences with my ancestors, but the other short story that I'll tell you is that I was hiking. So I live in Sedona, for everybody who doesn't know me or know that. And I was hiking around Bell Rock and Courthouse Butte, and I got to the south side of Courthouse Butte, and I turned around and I was looking at the rock, and I was compelled to raise my arms, and I leaned back and I looked at the rock, and I started getting this vision of me climbing to the top of the rock, and I could feel myself climbing. And that would not be a rock that you would normally climb on, but I was climbing to the top of the rock. I got to the top, I stood at the edge, I leaned over, and as I was coming off of the rock, I became an eagle. It was a very profound experience. Eagle has come to me many times in my life. It's a guide for me. But I could feel the whole thing. I could feel becoming an eagle. I could feel the wind in my wings. I could feel myself soaring around at the bottom of that rock. And it's just one of the many profound, interesting, life-changing experiences that I've had here in Sedona. It's a very special place for that.
Mhm.
So anyway.
The iron in the rock formations enliven our EM field, enliven our blood flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
first magnetic field, and it's potent there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you just pay attention, I think often we don't pay attention. We just, oh, that's nothing, if you just pay attention and sit with it for a moment. It's amazing the experiences that you can have.
I think the spontaneous daydreams are also so interesting, when you just see a movie reel go on. You're getting a download spontaneously.
Mhm.
I've been with people where they get lost in thought and somebody wants to, hey, come back. I'm like, no, 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 let them finish. They'll come back on their own. I
Yeah,
think very sacred moments that we have. There's
yeah,
something the universe wants to show us and tell us
for
through our
sure.
imagination. Yeah.
Yeah, and the lesson that might be in that is you never know
Yes. Yeah.
what you might learn about yourself.
Yeah. Beautiful. With Reiki, we've had many people compare. You have been one of them, Barbie. Your Reiki experiences of feeling heat, seeing visions, seeing colors, hearing the ancestors, so similar to the ritual postures. Do you want to comment on that? We've often heard correlations with Reiki.
Yeah, interesting. So the story that pops into my head is that so one of the things that I during my different trainings, I did a course called Kundalini Reiki, which opens up my Kundalini, my channel
Mhm.
wider so that I can channel more energy because I don't know how much everybody knows about Reiki, but what you become a channel for the universe, God, source, energy, whatever you call that, whatever that is for you. And so that you're channeling the energy through you.
To
So I
transmit to the patient or to the Healy. Yeah.
correct. And actually whoever you're working with, it's intelligent. So their body is pulling the energy that they need. I'm not pushing energy into someone. They are pulling what they need into themselves.
You're like a battery. Okay.
Yeah. So I was working with this gentleman and I I could tell that I needed to open my channel up further. And I don't do it all the time, but I asked for my Kundalini channel to open up further. And I was just, I was so hot. I became so hot. I literally was dripping sweat down the side of my face and all along the side of him. It was a very intense experience. I've never had anything quite like it. And, I moved around and one side of his body, typically not always, but typically the left side of your body is the receiving side and the right side is the giving side. So all down the left side of his body. And I just stood there and the energy was just flowing through me. Well, fast forward, we get to the end of the session and we start talking. And he said, wow, I could feel how hot you were when you were on my left side. And I said, I know that was really intense. I don't know what was going on. And we started talking. Turns out this gentleman is a lineman. He works with electricity. He crawls up on poles and fixes, electricity and stuff like that. So he's working. It was so interesting because he's working with this electrical energy all the time, which I don't know what that effect is.
Mm.
Other than maybe that just opens him up more
Mhm.
for receive. I don't
Feel
know. It was
you-
a very interesting experience, though.
And what he pulled out of you. Oh, interesting. And how many times have in our work the heat come on? It's not from the room and people are perspiring.
Oh, yeah, it always comes on when I work, but that was probably the most intense
Yeah.
time. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you, Barbie.
yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.
I
What I
have a,
wonder with these various things, what is activated in our physiology to produce that heat? We experience a lot of heat with
Yeah,
activation. Yeah.
yeah,
Trembling as well, a lot. We
yeah.
talked about being filled up with, yeah. So
thank you. Yeah.
thank you. Barbara.
I also got an email from James Lawyer today who said he could not attend. He wanted to apologize, but he said he had two interesting stories that he wanted to share that happened to him while he was at the Institute in New Mexico. Number one is we were getting ready to start a session. We were sitting down in the kiva, the sacred space that we begin with our posture work and the whole thing. And he said he interrupted as we were getting ready to go. And he said, wait a minute, stop. We need to wait for that person that's coming down the path. He says he was sitting inside and he was facing out the small window that opens to the path of the kiva. And he saw a woman in a long skirt and moccasins walking down the path. But when the door was open, there's nobody there. And of course, those of us that spent time at the Institute know that that was what Felicitas Goodman always wore, long skirts and moccasins. And that was, and he was not a student of Felicitas's directly. It was after her passing that he became part of the Institute. So it wasn't like he had a special relationship there. He had to be told that that was some relationship to the spirit of Felicitas. The second experience that he typed up for me, he says, we're about ready to start the posture and the door's still open. So we were in quiet preparation. Then I saw a mountain lion walk in. It walked around and it looked at each person and came back and stopped and looked at me directly and then went out the door. And he said, wow, what was that? Did anybody see that? And then he said, someone in the circle said, just outside of the kiva is a large stone rock, which we refer to as the mountain lion rock, the spirit of lion that had always been part of this land. Of course, we don't know how far back. It's indigenous land, part of the Pueblo culture going way back into history. And so it's always been recognized as the back of a mountain lion. You can see the spine of the mountain lion. Anyway, that was the other experience that he wanted to share as part of his participation in today's.
Animals becoming messengers.
Yeah.
I remember being sitting in the kiva as we were all, and Felicitas named it kiva, by the way. It wasn't a true kiva. We just called it that. But sitting around in a circle, a person's talking about their visionary experience involving a hummingbird. The doors open after for this sharing. A hummingbird flies in, circles the room, stops right in front of her, hovers for a long, and then flies out. It's like, okay, thank you. Animals can be messengers. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's raise our hands. Who else wants to share some experiences and join in on today's discussion? This is fun. It's an exciting opportunity for us to relax a little bit and just allow for the exploration of our own experiences and put them in perspective. And like Vance talked about, I mean, it's, society kind of looks at you a little bit odd sometimes, but not so much anymore. More and more and more people are open to this, especially when you're talking about, like Carolyn talked about, a visitation from a mother, a family member, that moment in time when you have a visitation and then you find out something's happened in your family. So one of those moments that are not so positive, that someone has passed away or whatever, but that person appears to you prior to the passing and you weren't there at the time, but you had the experience. That was something that happened to me.
Well,
So,
while people are raising their hands, I will share a story from our friend Nicola.
okay.
One that, precedes the big UFO phenomenon, because this happened several decades ago. This is the story she told me. And by the way, when Vance, who's in the aviation software business, can say that 2% of the unexplained sightings of aerial phenomenon,
Right.
He believes are real, but he's no expert, he said. Our government's saying, well, there's some things that we can't explain. They've been caught on video, on technology, on radar, all of that. And the big deterrent to admitting, well, maybe we are being visited would be, well, look at the distances between the planets, the stars that could be habitable. Look at we don't see any habitable planets in our solar system. Think of the distance they'd have to travel. How do you do that? Well, here's one that possibly could answer that. So this is the story that I'm told, and I'm hearing it secondhand, third hand. Yeah. So Nicola had a friend who had a ranch, and this was somewhere in the Midwest. She was a horsewoman, and she had a ranch, and it was rather remote. She had a dog and she had a horse. The dog starts barking crazily for a couple of nights. So the next day, she's out there with her horse, and she's just riding. The horse likes to be ridden. They're just riding, and all of a sudden, the horse stops, puts on his front legs, stops, jerks back, and his eyes are looking at something in the foreground. So naturally, her friend, I forgot her name.
Shane or something.
Shane, thank you, Shane. She looks at where the horse is looking, and she described to Nicola that the air grew wavy. The air just grew and then a tear happens in the air, and out pops this little, like he's walking out of a tear in the fabric of the air, of what you could only describe as a gray alien. It was grayish or beigeish. It had big black eyes. It was tiny and thin with a huge head. This was before gray aliens were generally known, right? This was, as I said, many decades ago.
That term.
Shane is relating this story to Nicola. And then she said it was startled when it saw the horse and her, and it goes back in where it came from. It folds itself back through the tail. The air grows wavy again, and then that whole dissipates and becomes normal. And Shane is like shocked. This is imprinted on her mind, and she told this story many years later. So, I'm just wondering, maybe there's other dimensions. Maybe there's some technology or some technique to truly open these portals and physically step through them. We just do this consciously, but physically step through these portals.
Yeah. And it's not like every experience has to be quote unquote real, but there's something about the human journey itself is to allow for that intersection with the world around us and allow the interdimensionality of everything that the things can reveal themselves in different ways to us. And maybe it's just part of what this institute's dedicated to. A significant part of our journey has been just understanding that relationship to what Dr. Goodman referred to as the alternate reality, and not necessarily speaking about ghosts or the kind of things we're talking about today, but just the idea that the human experience is much more vast than Western culture gives it credit for. And so that's why we have to look to our ancestors and indigenous cultures for some clues of what they found, and more and more.
Been
and
around
more.
a long time to record these, haven't they? And to put them into their stories and folklore and mythologies. I want to say, you said we humans, but I have to say that our cats and our dogs are also centuries to this.
Right.
And by the way, Nicholas said, Shane said it took many days for the dog to come out from under the porch. He was terrified. He knew something was afoot. And who knows what they can see. They have, right? So I will say that there have been many times when we were invoking a cat associated with a posture, when people's cats reacted in very interesting ways, wanting to be in the room, sitting in the chair that they had just vacated to do this posture, purring, making themselves known. Animals sense this. Animals sense this. We used to invite our dog Chance, our wolf Malamute Chance, to sit in a circle gathered of this work. And he would just sit there like the Sphinx and just be quiet the whole time and enjoy. So animals are perceptive.
Yeah. Tony, did you raise your hand again? Did you want to add another comment?
I think Vance raised his real hand.
Okay.
I mean, not Vance, Rodney. I'm sorry, Rodney.
Rodney.
Oh, good, Rodney. Thank you.
Well,
Good,
I've already got Tony up on screen. So Tony, go ahead and make your comment. Yeah, and we'll go to Rodney next.
Okay, well, I guess just a quick thing. Years ago, I did an experiment when I had an impression that something was being communicated to me. And I think I might have told you about it long ago. I would write it down in a notebook, and I was doing it rigorously. And the more I wrote it down, the more they would happen to me. I'd write them down on the left-hand side of the page. And then when I found out what happened, I'd write down on the right-hand side. So I'd have cause and effect, cause and effect. And the correlation was extremely high of things that I could not know otherwise. That somebody needed something, that I should talk to a distant friend, and they call me all of a sudden. Amazing things just happened. But this was a very real mini experiment, and it worked out very well. And I also was thinking of what Vance was saying, and I was showing a pendulum. I don't know if any of you have played with a pendulum where you ask questions, yes or no. It's a little bit like the flame of the candles. And I was doing this to a scientist who some of you know. She'll go unnamed. And she's also into the mystic world. And I told her how to ask questions, and the pendulum would start swinging. And she became very concerned. She would move her hand in a way to counter the swinging of the pendulum, to make it stop, because she really wasn't quite convinced it could be real. sometimes we go out of our way to convince ourselves that these things we're experiencing are not real. But I think they're very real. And I'll stop at that. And this is very exciting. And there are many stories that each of you have to tell. I want to hear them.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. That's such a good point, Tony. We want to protect our version of reality very often, don't we?
Yeah.
Deny these things because we're not prepared to accept it. Yeah. Rodney.
Hello.
Hi, and welcome. So good.
Thank
Where
you.
are you in the
Thank
world?
you. I'm no scientist. My background is in construction carpentry, and I've been a heavy equipment operator a good deal of my life. But anyway, it's been very interesting to, listen to everyone's experiences here and to gain a little insight on how people view different things. My experience was what I believe to have been a UFO sighting, and that was in 2015. It was on a Sunday, and the reason the date is so familiar to me is my wife saw this event with me, but her mom had just passed like 4 days before we saw this. And anyway, I would just kind of like to describe what I experienced. My wife is here with me. I don't know if she'll talk or not, but she experienced the same thing with me. Her vision of what we saw varies a little from mine. I assume that's natural in these descriptions of, and it's been years ago now too. So memory can kind of alter some of the perception, I assume. But at any rate, I believe it was something not of our world, what we witnessed, and it was pretty amazing to me. I think I viewed this object for 10 to 12 minutes, something like that in total. And I probably watched it for at least 5 minutes before I got the notion to run into the house to get my wife, And we lived in Bothell at the time, which is in Washington State, for anyone who's not familiar with that. But I still live in Washington, so I'm here in Washington in the Everett area, probably 15 miles north of where this event occurred for us. But at any rate, it was a Sunday. It was clear skies. It was toward the evening, and when the event was ending, it was almost dark. So it was late in the evening, I guess, when I first started watching this. But anyway, I was on the back of our house. We had a nice big deck, and I was standing out there just kind of looking off into the distance. And I noticed something hovering in the sky. And at that time, I wasn't sure what it was, but I continued to watch it. And it moved across the sky and then made sort of a sudden stop. And it seemed to me that it moved kind of gently, and then it made a sudden stop. And I theorized, possibly later, not sure if I had this in my mind at the time I was witnessing this, but I think when I originally started viewing it, it was over the Everett area, maybe where we have a naval station, kind of trying to put some perspective as to where this event originated in my viewing. And then it moves sort of south, and I theorize it might have stopped over Mukilteo for some reason. And then it moved again, and it moved to the Linwood area, not sure what the relationship is. But at one point, this structure was so huge, it seemed to me that in retrospect, it seemed to me like this must have been some kind of mothership. Okay, I mean, it was that big. It seemed to be multiple stories high, and it seemed rectangular in my view. Okay, I could see an outline of the structure at various points, and it made no noise. It emitted no emissions like, gas or anything that would say that, this was some technology that we have. It was well beyond that in my mind. And at any rate, it was pretty far out there for me. It was almost too, at various points, like it had some kind sort of cloaking device, going back to Star Trek. I mean, it kind of came into view and then sort of faded.
Oh,
At these points, when it was off in the distance from me, I was seeing sort of an outline, but then it moved from the point that I think was possibly the Linwood area directly over Bothell.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it from, standing underneath of it. Okay. And at one point when it was sort of over the top of us where we lived near the downtown in Bothell, and it was sort of a flight path for some of the airports. Planes regularly went behind our house at various altitudes.
Mhm.
But at one point, I had this huge structure and I had this plane going over the top of it. Okay. And the plane in relation to the object looked like a minnow in the sky, if you can imagine that. It
Oh,
gave some perspective to me as to how big this object must have been. Okay.
Hmm.
And like I say, to me, at various points, it looked to be rectangular and dynamic, ginormous, okay,
Yeah.
huge, okay, and multiple stories high. I couldn't tell you how many stories. I know it was more than two, maybe more than three. I don't know. And I could only see parts of it, and I could only see an outline at various points. And that outline sort of at some points over these minutes was more pronounced than not. And so it kind of came and went. There was sort of a fuzziness to it. And that's where the cloaking device comes in for me. But when it was over the top of us, we could see, my wife and I, green and yellow light, or green and red lights. Okay. And they were a bank of lights, and some were green and some were red, and they were flashing. Okay. From underneath the structure. Okay. My wife thought that they were trying to communicate something with us. And of course, it was well beyond my understanding. I had no concept of what they were trying to communicate. But
Yeah.
this bank of lights kept going and going and going and flashing, and they were bright green and bright red. And there was a pattern. For me, the ship was rectangular. At one point, she thought that it was sort of ship-like shape with a prow. I don't know whether in the front or the back. She kind of thought that the structure was oval. I don't know if she got that from the flashing lights, or this is her perception versus mine.
Yeah.
But I was in no way understanding what they were trying to communicate. And we assume that from these lights that maybe there were various stops that it made along the way, the
Okay, I'm
movement.
here for only 1 minute to clarify something.
Yes, please
Bye,
do.
bye,
You would
Barbara.
come on and add to this. Wow.
The green and red lights were what I was focusing on the most because they were in patterns. I thought they were trying to spell out letters. So I kept focusing, like, are they trying to communicate with us? They're trying to tell us something, right? Like spell a word out, something like that, because that was the type of patterns that these lights, first it'd be green, then it'd be red, back and forth, not at the same time. Then I really wish he never would have come and got me, because I don't want to know about it already. So here's the thing. All of a sudden we're watching this thing and I'm trying to figure out what it's telling us, basically, when all of a sudden it looked like it was landing. And it got so scared. I mean, I hit the deck, like on all fours. I'm like, oh my God, it's landing. But it wasn't landing. It was leaving so quickly. It was going over the horizon. That made it look like, this is how fast this thing took off. It scared the daylights out of me. I would like to forget about it, but Rod keeps reminding me of it.
Sorry, that's my, and also I thought it was more of an oval shape, but like I said, I was really clearly just trying to figure out what they were trying to tell me. I felt like they're trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting that you weren't frightened until you thought it was going to land
Right.
right there. And you're looking at this giant object overhead and just, oh, wow.
It was
Oh my,
scary.
ordinary sliding. Do you
Yeah.
know the date of it? You have it recorded?
July 19th.
Yeah.
2015. Her
20
mom passed away on July 15. And
Yeah.
That's
Sorry.
how I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was shortly after. And even part of my head said, maybe it's my mom coming to communicate with me. I know that's crazy, but you know, I was sort of thinking that maybe like because you know,
I had that thought too,
oh, you
because
did? Oh, you're
well,
crazy too.
yeah, crazy also. Well, in relation to everything that people have spoken about here today, you know, the previous few years, I had lost my dad in 2011
Should pull
and
the chair, man.
adopted dad in 2013, and then my mom in 2014, and then Barb's mom in 2015. And at one point, it entered my mind, are this huge mothership, are all our loved ones on board coming to say, give a message to us, to wish us well, to, you know, at some point. Then the other experience I had in real time was I had the thought, come take me, right? And then that thought scared me so bad I screamed at myself internally saying, what are you saying? What are you thinking? You know, can they read my mind? Time out. I don't want that.
I was
You
going to
know,
ask if there
but
was telepathic communication because that can be reported as well.
yeah,
There's some famous cases of that.
I really don't.
I just want to let you people know it's scary and it scared me.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to ask another question and from
Sure.
a technology point of view. You're talking about the headquarters of Boeing. You're talking about the part of the world where all the engineering is taking place, not trying to turn this into a man-made thing, because that's not what it is. But that particular focus that takes place in that part of the world would seem that if there was some sort of craft, it would want to explore what we're
Sure.
building and knowing what the hell we're up to, because Boeing
Right.
leads the world in that kind of
Well, and think of the first UFO sighting that hit the newspapers. It was right over Seattle, right? Bothel's a neighborhood of
Oh,
Seattle.
really?
I
Okay.
didn't know that, but in Bothell, there's this really weird place. It says it's FEMA. No one that lives there believes it is FEMA. It's on the top of a hill in Bothell, and it has all of these big round, you know, those big round things that they point in the sky, like radar things, right? But
Or a dish.
dishes, yeah,
Yeah.
big, huge, enormous dishes, right?
yeah.
And I was thinking it had something to do with that because, you know, we were in Bothell, and I knew that that was there because my girlfriend lives really close to that. And
Yeah.
they've told her all kinds of different things of what they're doing there. Nobody really believes, nobody knows what they're doing, or really believes them, but they're doing something there. So I thought maybe that's related in some way. I don't know.
Wow.
Well, I want to
That's a great-
suggest that Peter Davenport heads the UFO reporting national hotline.
Uh-huh.
And
In
he would
Seattle.
love to hear your story. He's right. Well, now he was a Seattleite, but now he moved to Eastern Washington, to
Okay.
Davenport, Washington.
Yeah. I've never reported. I didn't even know there were any reporting places until recently. I think it was a couple months ago that I was watching Ancient Aliens and
Yeah.
MUFON came up and I saw it. And so I looked it up after the show and I went on and typed in a report similar to what I told you here to
Yeah.
them. And they had somebody call me, okay, and talk to me. And actually they talked to Barbara too. And so we tried to relay our stories to him. But he seemed very in my mind, he seemed very I don't know, negative to what I had to say.
Just dismissive.
He tried to make me believe in my mind that the things that I saw, that the United States government possesses this technology. I don't know.
My
You know.
gosh.
Well, he
Yeah.
had an agenda to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of
Go ahead.
yeah,
Okay.
kind of
Yeah.
put off by it, but
I would be, I would recommend Peter. He's taken half a
yes,
million.
I listened to your interview of him recently.
And
Oh,
because
okay.
you know the
how
date
old that
and the
was, but
time, he could tell you how many other sightings, maybe other
Right.
people have seen
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so he
And
could
I listened to his
that.
description of his sighting, when he was a boy, right? I mean,
Right.
so that was quite interesting for me to hear that.
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I'd love to follow up with anybody that wants to hear more.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I left this experiencing thinking that we have no technology anywhere close to what I saw. Okay.
Right.
I mean, the human race has no technology close to that. The other thing that I think I can say is that whatever their business is in this world, these people from other worlds, they must not have ill intentions toward us necessarily. As far as I know, they come and do their business and they leave. And as far as I know, they haven't harmed anyone that I know of, or
Right.
they didn't interrupt my life other than the sighting. And so I don't feel threatened by them. I feel threatened by more political things going on than I do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I anyway, that was my experience, and I appreciate the
Thank
opportunity
you, Rodney.
to
Yeah.
share.
Fascinating. Well, thank you, Rodney and Barb. So appreciate the detailed description. And do you feel you were in telepathic communication? Do you think that the thought
I really don't. I
was a
think that
communication?
I just have feel like I not in touch like a lot of our viewers here, are in touch with themselves, I guess, internally, and the things that sort of come at us. I personally
Yeah.
don't. Do you think that they had any psychic connection to any of your experience?
I don't feel like I did over that particular incident,
Mhm.
but oftentimes I know what's going to happen before it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
you're
Premonitions.
one of us. Okay. Thank you.
I don't necessarily want to know, but it just
Right.
comes to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And sure enough, whatever it is happens, which also scares me. I get scared easy.
Yeah.
But had we grown
Well,
up in a different culture where these things were matter of fact,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we would be working with it, right?
Yeah.
Tony just described that a journal like Tony's might be very interesting because I think for me, they come as positives. They're
Yeah.
not, or warnings that I heed. I
Yeah.
remember one time Paul and I were going on a trip and we had this little tiny car. And I had this intuition, let's not park it under the tree, Paul. Let's put it over here. Sure enough, we come home. He did this. He's learned. Listen and do it. Just don't argue. Just do it. You there, darling. And a tree branch had fallen down right where the car would have been and would have totaled it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I can understand that type of experience because I've had, okay, this one time I was like 9 months pregnant with my
I
daughter.
want to see your face, Barb. We've got to come a
I
little.
was
There we
like,
go. Thank
I
you
was
so
like
much.
9 months pregnant with
Give
my
Anna a hug.
daughter. So it was a long time ago. It was 1982. And I was driving home. It was like 10 p.m. at night. And I'm on this road. It comes to a T. You got to take a left or a right. There's a stoplight and you have to make a choice. Do I go left or right? So I'm coming to this T and all of a sudden my foot's on the brake and I'm like, the light's green. Why am I braking? I don't want to brake. Why am I braking? I cut right to the light and this car comes flying through there with no lights on, just speeding. It would have totaled me.
Oh, yeah.
It would have totaled me.
Yeah.
See?
And it definitely would have. But it's like that intuition thing that I knew that I should stop even though it was a green light, right? So I kind of get where you're coming from because I've had some things like that happen to me too.
And your
Which-
body takes over. Your body put on the brake. Your
Right.
mind was a little bit slow to come to that intellectual, but your
Yeah.
intuition was right there and operational.
Yeah.
And that's a
Exactly.
survival skill, right? To sense that survival skill. Beautiful. I was
So
also wondering
I
the
do have that.
patterns of the lights. One other question, because you paid attention to the lights. The
Yes.
patterns of the lights, I believe that we have symbols and iconography and glyphs that are more communicative us in a deeper level than our written English, right? English is just a current language, a created language, but we can go back to the caves of 40,000 years ago And fully one half of the patterns and the designs on the early cave walls from the Ice Age are geometric symbols. And so these are embedded in us. I can look at other languages and symbols and go, oh yeah, that's from the Ice Age, that's from the Ice Age, that's from the Ice Age. These have been with us for so long, just simple geometric patterns. Were any of the red lights in maybe simple geometric patterns, do you think? Do you recall?
What I recall was thinking they're trying to make letters, but they weren't really making letters. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking to myself, is that a letter R? No, the top part's missing. Is that a letter L? No, this part, in my head, I was just trying to figure, I was focused so greatly on it, but it was like, they were in like a grid. So there wasn't any round, everything was squared off,
Interesting. So
Sorry.
multiple lights that would light up into be like connected lines of some kind.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then it would be green, and then it would flash to red, and it would be a different pattern, right? And that's why I kept thinking, oh, they're trying to communicate with us. What are they trying to say? And I was so focused on that.
Yeah.
And
And the question I had too at the time
I did
was,
see the airplane
Are-
too,
are-
like Rob, because we were in a holding pattern for SeaTac. So there was a plane flying around the lake,
Yeah.
the thing I thought at the time was, are they trying to communicate with us? Were they trying to communicate with maybe other aliens that are inhabiting our space? I don't know. I was way all above my head, so I couldn't make heads or tails of it. But those were kind of real-time questions I was thinking.
But yeah, it was all like squares, and it could be like a diagonal line, but nothing curved. It was all straight, lines.
Well, I'll
Intricate
add, go ahead.
patterns. Your description of it fading in and out is like maybe their cloaking device is malfunctioning. Maybe there's a lot more going on that we are
And then when it took off, it was just like a laser. I mean, it was so fast.
Oh, it was the fastest thing I've ever seen in my life.
To me, it looked like it crashed. Okay, it looked like the thing crashed. And I later, rationalized that, well, maybe what I saw was this light following the curvature of the Earth, and it was going at a speed that made it look like it was crashing. But at that time, I got in my truck and I drove toward 405.
Oh yeah, and then like within a minute, all of a sudden there were those F-16 fighter jets. Like within like a minute, flying over our head. They were in patterns. So like I know the military knew there is no way, because that wasn't like something normal that we would ever see in Bothell, right?
Right.
And like within just a minute, then we saw them.
After they
pretty
took
much
off.
validation
Yeah.
for you that other people saw it too, right
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Well, that's what we thought. I made a report with the police department the next day. They didn't invite me in or anything like that.
Yeah.
I called to try to talk to somebody, right? And they said, "Where are you?" I says, "I'm downstairs." And so they sent somebody downstairs. I assume he was a police officer. I think he was in plain clothes. And I tried to relate my story, and he kind of gave me that look, "Are you crazy or what?" But I don't know. I don't know if they wrote anything down.
Peter Davenport, National
Right.
Youth Reporting Service. Peter has
Oh.
a protocol where he actually draws out, and helps you ascertain the distance, the size, the lighting of the day, all the details he will ask for.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And
I'd
this
love
was,
to talk to him. So anyway,
yeah, he will be very receptive. Yeah.
so I can just look him up online.
Yeah, National UFO Reporting Service, right, Paul? I think it's a
Yeah.
206 number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter
Okay,
Davenport,
I'll write it
National
down.
UFO Hotline. I'll
Show up
report
in
on it.
Google. Yeah.
I'll just also add that you're
You should
not
come and
alone
listen
with
to
your.
us more. You found kindred souls, you and Barb. Come and hang out with us on Sundays. Yeah.
I would love to. I hope that she'll take more of an interest in it. But yeah, they've had
mostly
this
what I
scare.
try to do is I try and deny anything's happening that's not in my normal world. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want to know. Rod won't let me forget it. He keeps bringing it up. And but I have had other, like you and the car, other experiences like that throughout my life where I felt that I had ESP or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Well, these
Yeah.
are the same channels the angels communicate with you on, and the bright, beautiful beings. and send blessings and healing and divine energy. So you got a bandwidth, make sure that you focus it and bring in what you want. So you have that capacity.
Right.
Mhm. I was going to also add to the conversation that we interviewed the department chair at Harvard University, Avi Loeb, and Avi Loeb is very open to the research and saying it cannot be dismissed. And he
Right.
has a particular story. And since you already listened to our previous interviews, Avi Loeb, Loeb, and we interviewed him twice. And he had some, he's really taking on the naysayers saying, wait a minute, you can't say that. You can't just dismiss it. There's something going on here. And
Right.
I mean, and at his distinguished level of recognition, he has a voice in the scientific community that can't be denied. So he's worth listening to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well,
So-
thank you so much to you two, both of you.
Yeah, it was great to share.
You
Yeah,
both.
I thought it was kind of interesting how we met, how I came across you guys, or you came across me in this sense.
How did it happen?
How did you find
Oh.
us?
Oh, through the ad you had on Facebook regarding your cabinet top. Remember?
Oh, Laura was selling something.
Ew.
Oh.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. How
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm off selling the better goods of a house. Yeah.
Your move. Yeah.
Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, wonderful, Rodney.
Yeah,
Thank
good,
you.
Rodney.
All
Pardon
right.
me?
Thank
I
you.
couldn't hear you.
But how great to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Oh,
Thank you.
sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you guys. All right, Paul.
Wow. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left here.
Well,
What do we say?
if
Sorry,
you have any
I'll-
more
No,
hands,
you are fascinating. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
We both.
yeah.
So I want to say, Paul, that you are among several people that I have talked to that have this superpower. Barb was talking about her ESP. We are born with channels open. We are blessed. These gifts are on loan from our Creator, right? They're on loan to us. We need to use them well and wisely. One of yours and many other people we have talked to, you can talk to the departed. And I know there's been scary movies about this. What was the famous one with Bruce Willis and the young kid? But this is really a lovely superpower that you've had. I have been sitting next to you in a deep meditation when I knew your father, who had passed away, came through to you, and that you got that resolution with him directly. I have been with you when your sister came through to you. You have woken up many times from dreams in which your mother came. She's also departed and had deep and loving conversations with you. You have had deep, deep dreams in which you spent more time with my parents than you did your own, living side by side with them. My parents were your parents as well. And they called you their fifth child. So that this is a superpower that you have. And I just want to assure Barb that these can be very blessed, beautiful messages, very deeply meaningful, and that we are in service to bring through these messages. This can be such a blessing and such a gift. So utilize it well and learn to utilize it well. And that, Paul, I wanted you just to speak for a moment to assure Barb and Rodney that you have to mute this.
What?
I'm hearing an echo. Speak to this, Paul, and just say the beauty that has come through, the power, the connection, the messages that were there for us, the heartfelt connection.
Well, thank you, Laura. I think, let me just say some things in summary, of course, my own experience, but I think all of us are on a lifelong journey of exploration. I think that if we can pay attention to the clues, and the clues are all around us, whether it's a physical world thing financially that's going on, maybe it's something else happening in the world that, like we mentioned, getting to a stop sign or not going through a stop sign or all those things. I think that if we can just continue to develop and respect that intuition, that inner knowingness that we all have, The Aboriginals, Laura, we know the story of the Aboriginals who say that they can sit there and be talking to you, and at the same time they're having a conversation with someone else across the country. That they have a dual and multi-world experience of how the world exists. And I think there's more and more and more of that we're discovering now, that Westerners, we cut ourselves off.
Yeah.
We cut ourselves off, and now we're returning to that knowingness, that being open to that possibility that the world goes so far beyond. I won't layer on a bunch of my own personal stories, but ultimately, I think that those times in my life, whether it's finding the most beautiful wife and bride in my world, when we live on opposite sides of the country, we live probably at least 3,000 miles away growing up or whatever, and not having any potential relationship of finding each other other than just being at the right place at the right time, attending the right kind of events and having us be put together. And all of a sudden that recognition and knowingness. And that feeling when you see somebody for the very first time and yet you know them? You have that feeling, I know this. Wow, this is so familiar to me, and I just met you this second. So the moment I saw Laura, it was like, wow. It's just that she's above my pay grade. So, I just was stunned by her. I immediately felt energy, and I couldn't, it was just so overwhelming for me. But at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, but so she's above my level of whatever, and so just being there and allowing for that to manifest over time when I had the confidence to approach you and all of that. So, and I think that's part of what I'm comfortable with, is that I'm still growing, and the way that we run this institute has to be on an intuitive level. Nobody in their right mind is going to take on this responsibility and think that they're going to intellectually design, manipulate, and force this work to be something specific. The work has to be the leader, the work and the experiences that we allow to be there. And that was the wonderful thing about Dr. Goodman, is that she had the academia qualifications and knowledge, being a storyteller and someone who understood the stories of indigenous people around the world, but also she knew the experiential part of it and being enough of an open person not to direct it. She let the experiences be the direction of how this institute was created. And so when we would meet with her and we would have experiences, she would just say, interesting. She didn't say like, that's the right experience and that's the wrong experience. She didn't give us anything to make us feel restricted in the sharing of what was happening with it. Because from her point of view, this is a scientific investigation, and I don't want to interrupt what this can be and what these posture sessions and this gathering.
Our experiences are to be taken seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So
and we started with Carolyn and her mom and the communication. We've talked about, many of these messages coming through. They're important. Pay attention.
So I think the invitation for all of us is to really step it up. Step it up by opening ourselves up, by being opening to it. So if we come, no matter what family we come from, no matter what culture we come from, there's an opportunity for us here. And the joy of life itself is that with the aging process, potentially comes wisdom. And I say the word potentially because you can shut yourself off from learning new things, and you can be static in your learning and be stuck in whatever you learned back when you were 20 years old. But all of a sudden, the world becomes your oyster. It becomes your opportunity to embrace all that you can learn. So what we try to do with these Sunday discussions is open ourselves. We don't come at the Sunday discussions where we have something that we know we have to tell you. It's always like, let's invite scholars in. Let's find out what they know. We might learn something new today. This would be great to hear something we've never heard before, or maybe a different way of saying things that we've heard, but we didn't use the particular understanding for it to really sink in for us. And so conversation for exploration.
We're all scholars, Paul. We're all explorers. We're all artists.
Exactly.
We're all visionaries.
Yeah. So that's why
life is, if you have something important to share, something real and authentic and heartfelt, and you want to hear it.
Yeah. So this is that forum for that. This is that forum for it. So, all right. Well, thank you for the blessing of your presence today and for participating in this conversation and helping us go further in exploration. Rodney and Barb, this is not a traditional thing that we do on Sundays. We do a lot of other things. So go to our website. We have 150 videos. We have 100 and something podcasts. There's a full spectrum of research and discussions happening, and find that thing that best resonates with you and follow that path and give us feedback. We appreciate that. Yeah.
Love you
Bye-bye,
guys.
everybody. Take care. Good health. Blessings. Yeah.